My name is Emily Carter. I'm 29 years old. And the strange thing about the moment your future quietly begins to collapse is that it rarely sounds like a disaster when it starts. There's no dramatic music, no warning signs flashing in red. Sometimes it begins in the middle of making dinner. I was standing at the stove on a Tuesday night, stirring pasta that had already gone slightly too soft, when Ethan walked in. He didn't kiss me, didn't even look at me right away. He just dropped his phone on the counter with a sharp, deliberate sound and said, "We need to talk." Something in his tone made my hand pause mid-stir. Not loud, not angry, just rehearsed. I turned slightly, still holding the spoon. "Okay, about what?" He leaned back against the counter, arms crossed, eyes already tired, like I had exhausted him before I even spoke. "About your behavior lately." My chest tightened. "My behavior?" He let out a short breath, like I was proving his point. "The comments, the questions, it's exhausting, Emily." I blinked at him, genuinely confused. "What comments?" He gave me a look, half disbelief, half irritation. "Seriously? The gym selfie yesterday? You asked who took it." I frowned. "Because your reflection showed someone else holding the camera." "So?" He snapped lightly. "Maybe someone helped me get a better angle." The way he said it, so quick, so dismissive, made something inside me hesitate. "And the beach photos," he continued. "You wanted to know who else was there." "I asked because you said you were with your coworkers," I said slowly. "But there were no tags, no one else in the pictures." He laughed, short, sharp. "God, this is exactly what I mean." I felt my grip tighten around the spoon. "You analyze everything. It's paranoid. And honestly..." He shook his head, looking away. "It's really unattractive." That word landed harder than I expected. Unattractive. Like my concern wasn't just wrong, but embarrassing. "I'm not trying to..." I started. "Maybe you should work on yourself," he cut in, "instead of stalking my Instagram." Silence fell between us. Heavy, awkward, final. Then he grabbed his phone and walked past me toward the bedroom. Just like that. Conversation over. 20 minutes later, I was sitting alone at the kitchen table, eating pasta that had gone completely cold. Scrolling, not really reading anything. Just trying to quiet the noise in my head. That's when I saw it. A new post. Ethan. Another gym selfie. Same lighting, same mirror, different caption. "Surround yourself with people who understand your energy." Hashtag no drama. Hashtag living. My best life. The comments flooded in almost immediately. King energy. Some people just can't handle growth. And then, his friend Harmony commented, "Certain people need to step up or step out." I stared at the screen longer than I should have. Something about it felt coordinated. Like I wasn't just being dismissed. I was being positioned. Painted into a role I didn't agree to. I should have let it go. That's what the version of me from a year ago would have done. Explained it away. Told myself I was overthinking. But something had shifted. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just enough. Enough to make me look closer. That night, while Ethan slept beside me, breathing slow, peaceful, like nothing in the world was wrong, I kept scrolling through his posts. Not the recent ones. The older ones. Weeks back. Months. Looking for patterns instead of moments. And then, I noticed something. Something small. But not small enough to ignore. My heart didn't race. Didn't drop. It just settled. Like a piece of a puzzle quietly clicking into place. "Interesting," I whispered to myself. I picked up my phone. Typed one word. "Maybe." Then I set it down, stared at the ceiling for a long moment, and made a decision. I wasn't going to argue with him anymore. I wasn't going to defend myself. I was going to watch. The next morning, Ethan acted like nothing had happened. Smiling, kissing my cheek, even making breakfast, something he hadn't done in months. "Hey," he said softly, sliding a plate in front of me. "About last night." I looked up at him. Carefully neutral. "I was harsh," he continued. "You're not that insecure." Not that insecure. I almost smiled at the phrasing. "Just sometimes you worry too much," he added. I took a sip of my coffee. "It's fine." He relaxed instantly. "Good. So we're good?" "We're good." He grinned, satisfied, and went back to his phone, typing quickly, thumbs moving like he was juggling multiple conversations at once. I watched him. Really watched him. The ease. The confidence. The way he moved through the world like everything made sense. Like nothing needed explaining. That evening, he told me he was going to Harmony's place. "Vision board night," he said casually. "Just the guys. Chill." He kissed me goodbye. Said he'd be back by 11. At 11:47, my phone buzzed. "Staying at Harmony's tonight. Had a few drinks. Love you." I stared at the message for a long moment. Then slowly, I opened Instagram. There it was. Posted 15 minutes earlier. A story. A dimly lit cocktail lounge. Music, glasses clinking. And at the edge of the frame, A woman's arm. Not mine. Soft. Familiar. Too close. The story disappeared 5 minutes later, but not before I took a screenshot. The next morning, he walked in around 8, looking relaxed. Happy. Fun night? I asked lightly. So fun, he said. We made the best boards. Mine's all about focus and growth. Really? I smiled. Show me. Oh, I left it at Harmony's. You know how crafts are. I nodded slowly. I didn't know, because I did know something. Something he didn't realize yet. Harmony wasn't even in the city. He had posted about visiting family out of state. Airport selfies, timestamps, everything. Hope his trip's going well, I added casually. Ethan didn't hesitate. Yeah, he said it's been great. The lie came out so easily, so smoothly, like breathing. That was the moment. Not the post, not the argument, not even the story. That moment, when I realized he wasn't just hiding something. He was comfortable lying. And that meant this wasn't new. Later that afternoon, while Ethan was out, I sat down at my computer, opened my browser, and pulled up something I had found 3 days earlier. Something I hadn't fully understood at the time. But now it made perfect sense. A blog. Anonymous. Carefully written. Disturbingly detailed. I stared at the screen, my pulse steady. Not panicked. Not emotional. Just focused. Because I had a feeling this wasn't just going to explain everything. It was going to change everything. And this time, I wasn't going to be the one caught off guard. I leaned back in my chair, exhaled slowly, and began to read. The first post I opened was written in a voice so polished, so smug, that for a second I almost convinced myself it couldn't be Ethan. It sounded like someone playing a character, someone clever, detached, cruel in a way that masqueraded as wit. But the longer I read, the more the details sharpened into something unmistakable. Not because he used real names. He didn't. He changed them just enough to pretend he had a conscience. But the stories were real. Too real. A miscarriage retold as a lesson in female fragility. A messy divorce turned into how broken women create profitable content. A private girls' night reframed as a case study in emotional manipulation. And threaded through all of it was that same tone, half confession, half performance, like he wanted applause for getting away with it. The blog was called The Modern Man's Advantage. There were thousands of subscribers, paid tiers, affiliate links, courses, consulting packages. He wasn't just venting online. He had built an entire side income teaching men how to exploit women's trust while secretly monetizing the private pain of the women around him. I scrolled through the page, my fingers going colder with every entry. One post title read, How to Keep 3 Women Emotionally Invested Without Giving Any of Them the Full Version of You. Another, Why a Girlfriend Should Never Know Your Real Financial Situation. And then one that made my stomach turn. Her friends will tell you everything if you just listen quietly enough. I sat there staring at the screen, feeling something inside me rearrange itself. It wasn't heartbreak exactly. Not at first. Heartbreak is softer than that. This felt surgical. Like the truth had taken a knife to every excuse I had ever made for him. I kept reading. He wrote about women like they were puzzles to solve, weaknesses to map, resources to manage. He mocked insecurity in one paragraph, then explained how to create it in the next. He praised emotional availability when it benefited him, called it strategic softness. He described gift-giving as cheap emotional bait, apologies as reset buttons, affection as maintenance. And then, I found the entry that was clearly about me. He never said my name, but he didn't need to. How to neutralize a suspicious fiancé without starting a fight. I actually stopped breathing for a second. The post was recent, less than 2 weeks old. He described a woman who had started asking too many questions, noticing inconsistencies in content timing, and becoming annoyingly observant. His advice? Turn concern into insecurity. Make her feel embarrassed for noticing patterns. Use phrases like you're overthinking, you're too emotional, you're making this unattractive. Then follow it with affection the next morning to reset the dynamic. I read that paragraph 3 times because I could still hear his voice from breakfast. You're not that insecure. Sometimes you worry too much. We're good. My hands started shaking then. Not wildly, just enough to make me place them flat against the desk. He had rehearsed me. That was the part that hollowed me out. The argument in the kitchen hadn't even been spontaneous. It had been strategy, a technique, a scene from a manual he wrote for strangers. I don't know how long I sat there after that. Maybe 10 minutes, maybe 40. Time had started moving strangely. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional car passing outside, but inside my head, everything had become unbearably loud. Every moment from this past year came back sharper. The nights he told me I was imagining things, the way he laughed when I noticed small contradictions, the careful way he always made me feel like I was one breath away from becoming the crazy fiancé. I had spent months editing myself down to stay lovable, speaking softer, asking less, swallowing instincts that came to the surface like survival. And all along, he had been writing about it, selling it, teaching it. I laughed once then. A quiet, humorless sound. Because there was something almost grotesquely absurd about being emotionally manipulated by a man who apparently thought he was a philosopher because he could weaponize an Instagram story and a practiced sigh. I opened another tab and started taking screenshots. Not just the blog posts, everything. Subscriber counts, comment sections, payment pages, archived drafts. I saved the URLs, copied the headlines, created folders on my desktop with names that made my own calmness feel eerie. Evidence, screenshots, payments, drafts. That was when I found the draft folder. There were 6 unpublished posts. 5 of them were variations of the same smug garbage I'd already read. How to keep options open, how to manage emotional intensity, how women mistake attention for intimacy. But the 6th draft, the 6th one made my entire body go still. Why I'm phasing out my boring fiancé for a woman with real value. I clicked it. The post wasn't finished, but there was more than enough. He wrote that some women were good for structure and others were good for elevation. That a fiancé could be useful while you build, but not necessarily who you choose when your options improve. He described me as dependable, predictable, emotionally serviceable. Then he described another woman, older than me by a few years, stylish, connected, financially independent, not weighed down by domestic expectations. At first I thought he was just fantasizing. Then I kept reading. He mentioned a cocktail lounge downtown, private booths, weekday afternoons. How exciting it was to be with a woman who understood discretion. My mind flashed immediately to the arm in the Instagram story. Not mine, not accidental, real. There was someone else. Of course there was someone else. Cheating almost felt secondary at that point, not because it hurt less, but because it fit so neatly into everything else. The lying, the performance, the entitlement. It was just another room in the same rotten house. That evening, Ethan came home carrying takeout and wearing the version of his smile he used when he wanted to seem thoughtful. "I got Thai," he said, lifting the bag slightly. "From that place you like." I looked up from the couch. That was nice. He studied me for a second. Too carefully. "You okay?" I could have asked him then. I could have walked into the kitchen, opened my laptop, and laid his entire secret life out on the table between us like a corpse. But something in me already knew confrontation would only give him what he wanted. Time. Space to twist, deny, minimize, cry if he had to. So I smiled. A small one. "Tired," I said. He seemed to relax. "Long week." "You have no idea," I said. He laughed. Actually laughed. And for one strange, suspended second, I felt almost detached from my own body, as if I were watching us from across the room. There he was, the man I had almost married, opening containers, setting out chopsticks, talking about sauces and traffic and nothing at all. And there I was, nodding, responding, playing my part with a steadiness I didn't know I had. Sometimes betrayal doesn't make you scream. Sometimes it makes you terrifyingly calm. Over dinner, he started talking more than usual. That was one of his tells. When he sensed the emotional temperature dropping beyond his control, he filled the silence with charm. He asked about my day, complimented my sweater, told a funny story about someone from college. Then, casually, he mentioned he might need to go into the office Saturday. "Big client issue," he said. "Might be a few hours." I set my fork down. "On a Saturday?" He shrugged. "You know how it is." I did not, actually. Because Ethan did not work at the consulting firm he claimed to still work at. I had found that out 4 days earlier by accident, before I found the blog. I'd run into one of his former coworkers, a woman named Melissa, at a grocery store near my office. She'd smiled and asked how I was doing, then asked, far too casually, whether Ethan had found anything stable yet. I remember staring at her. "Stable?" She looked confused. "I thought he would have told you. They let him go in January." January, 4 months earlier. I smiled through the rest of the conversation on instinct alone, the way women do when our lives are detonating in public and we don't feel like making strangers carry the sound of it. Afterward, I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel until my palms hurt. He had still been leaving every morning in pressed shirts and polished shoes, still coming home complaining about meetings, still mentioning fake coworkers, still pretending his salary existed. At the time, I told myself there must be some explanation. Now I knew the explanation. He needed a respectable cover while he built a secret business teaching men how to emotionally hollow out women and call it male strategy. "Hope the client survives," I said. He smirked. "Barely." I smiled back. Poor thing. He didn't catch the tone. That was the problem with liars. Eventually, they become so used to hearing themselves that they stop listening to anyone else. Late that night, after he fell asleep, I went back to the blog. I started reading the comment section this time. Hundreds of men praising him, calling him brilliant, saying he understood female psychology, thanking him for the scripts that helped them regain control. Some asked for coaching. Some sent donations. And a few clearly knew him personally. Their comments were too familiar, too specific. One username caught my attention because I had seen it before on Ethan's Instagram. A woman's account. Private, but not private enough. Her profile picture was professionally shot. Her bio mentioned brand consulting. Her highlights were full of expensive restaurants, hotel lobbies, rooftop bars, soft focus luxury. I clicked through until I found it. A story saved from 2 weeks ago. The same cocktail lounge. Different angle. And there was Ethan in the reflection behind the bar, hand resting at the small of her back. My throat tightened. So that was her. Not random, not hypothetical. Real enough to archive. I took more screenshots. Saved them with the others. Then I looked up her name through tagged photos, public records, LinkedIn, every quiet digital breadcrumb people leave behind when they think presentation is the same thing as privacy. And what I found made me sit back in my chair. She wasn't single. Not even close. Her name was Vanessa Hale. Married. Her husband's page was public. Family photos, vacation pictures, anniversary post from less than a month ago. So Ethan wasn't just cheating. He was sleeping with a married woman while blogging about value, discipline, and strategic masculinity. I almost admired the symmetry of it. Rot dressed as sophistication. By Friday morning, I was no longer confused. Confusion had burned off. What was left was clarity. Cold, precise clarity. I didn't cry. That surprised me. Maybe I should have. Maybe there should have been one dramatic collapse in the shower, or on the kitchen floor, or into the arms of a best friend. But grief had not arrived yet. What arrived instead was instinct. Protect yourself. Document everything. Do not show him what you know until he has no room left to rearrange the truth. That morning, Ethan was affectionate again. He kissed my shoulder while I made coffee, wrapped his arms around my waist, rested his chin against my hair. "I've been thinking," he murmured. "Maybe I haven't been as present lately." I almost laughed. "Maybe," I said. He turned me gently to face him. "I don't want you doubting us." Us. Such a beautiful word when it's real. Such an ugly one when it's used as camouflage. "I'm not doubting anything," I said softly. And that, ironically, was the first fully honest sentence between us in days. Because I wasn't doubting anymore. I knew. I just hadn't decided exactly how the truth was going to enter the room. Saturday morning, he left at 9:10 in the crisp navy shirt he wore when he wanted to look expensive. "Office emergency," he said. I stood near the door in leggings and an old sweatshirt, holding a mug with both hands. "Right." He kissed me once, quick and practiced. "Don't wait up if it runs long." The door closed behind him. I waited 5 full minutes. Then I carried my coffee to the desk, opened my laptop, and logged back into the blog. This time I wasn't reading for pain. I was reading for structure. Who knew? Who was named? Who had been used? Who could identify themselves if they saw the right clue? The answer came fast. Too fast. And with it, a plan. Not loud, not reckless, not cruel for the sake of cruelty. Just enough light to let everyone see what had already been there. I opened Instagram, stared at the blank story screen. Then slowly I began to type. I didn't rush. That was the difference between reacting and deciding. My thumb hovered over the screen for a long moment before I finally typed. Sometimes the most interesting stories are the ones people think no one else will ever find. I kept it simple. No accusations, no names. Just enough weight behind the words to make the right people stop scrolling. I posted it. Then I set my phone down beside me and leaned back in my chair, eyes fixed on the ceiling, and waited. At first, nothing happened. 5 minutes. 10. 15. Just silence. Then my phone buzzed. Once. Twice. Then again. And again. The notifications started stacking so fast the screen barely had time to dim between them. I didn't open them immediately. I let it build, because I already knew what was happening. The right people had seen it, and unlike Ethan, They didn't need everything spelled out for them. The first message I opened was from Jade. Emily, what is this about? Then Destiny. You okay? This sounds not random. Then Chloe. Call me, now. My pulse stayed steady. No panic. No adrenaline spike. Just a quiet awareness that the first domino had already tipped. Then a name I didn't expect flashed across the screen. Vanessa Hale. I stared at it for a second before opening the message. Hi, this is going to sound strange, but... Was Ethan with you last night? My lips parted slightly. So she didn't know. Not everything, at least. I typed slowly. No. Why? 3 dots appeared immediately. Disappeared. Came back again. Because he told me he was with you. I exhaled through my nose, a faint, humorless smile tugging at the corner of my mouth. Of course he did. Of course I was the cover story. I stared at the message for a moment longer before typing. That's strange. He told me he was working. The typing bubble appeared again. This time it stayed longer. Then finally, we should talk. I didn't respond right away because something else had just happened. Something bigger. A new notification. A comment. On my story. From Harmony. Emily. Are you talking about a blog? My entire body went still. There it was. The second domino. I clicked into her profile immediately and opened her messages. What blog? I typed. Her response came almost instantly. Someone sent me a link this morning. I thought it was fake, but then I started reading. A pause. Then, Emily, I think it's Ethan. I closed my eyes for a second, not in shock, in confirmation. Because once one person saw it, the rest wouldn't be far behind. The group chat exploded at 3:17 p.m. I wasn't even an active participant in it most days, just someone who had been included because of proximity, not intimacy. But that didn't matter now. Messages flooded in so fast they overlapped. Jade, what is this blog? Destiny, tell me this isn't real. Chloe, he wrote about us? Then Harmony again. The miscarriage post, that's mine. He changed the name, but that's my story. Silence hit the chat for exactly 3 seconds. Then everything detonated. Screenshots, links, highlighted paragraphs. Each woman pulling pieces of her own life out of the blog like shards of glass. Jade's divorce, Destiny's weight loss journey, Chloe's family situation, Harmony's loss. All of it, rewritten, repackaged, sold. Their pain turned into strategy. Their vulnerability turned into income. And suddenly it wasn't just my relationship collapsing. It was his entire world. I didn't need to say much. I just dropped one thing into the chat. A screenshot. The homepage of the blog. Subscriber count visible. Payment tiers clearly listed. 47,000 followers. Monthly income estimates sitting comfortably between $3,000 and $5,000. And then, nothing. I didn't explain. Didn't accuse. Didn't narrate. Because the truth was already doing that on its own. At 4:02 p.m., my phone rang. Ethan. I let it ring. Watched his name flash across the screen like it belonged to someone I used to know. It stopped, then started again. And again. By the 4th call, I finally answered. Hey, I said calmly. Silence on the other end for half a second. Then, what did you do? His voice wasn't angry. Not yet. It was tight, controlled, like he was holding something back with both hands. I leaned back in my chair. Depends, I said. What do you think I did? You posted something, he snapped, and now everyone's... He, himself. I could hear movement. A door closing. Car engine. He was leaving wherever he was. Everyone's what? I asked softly. Don't play dumb, Emily. The blog. How did you find it? There it was. No denial. No confusion. Straight to the truth. I almost appreciated the efficiency. Your laptop, I said. Last week, you left a tab open. A sharp inhale. Then silence. Take it down, he said finally. The shift in tone was subtle but unmistakable. Less accusation. More demand. You're assuming I put it up, I replied. You might as well have, he snapped. People are connecting things. They're asking questions. Interesting, I murmured. Emily, you told me I was overthinking, I interrupted quietly. He went silent. You told me I was insecure. That's not the same thing. You told me it was unattractive, I continued. My voice never rose. Didn't need to. Emily, this isn't about that right now. No, I said, you're right. A pause. Then, this is about you. Another silence. He didn't know how to respond to that, because for once, there was nothing to twist. He got home at 5:23 p.m. The door slammed hard enough to rattle the frame. I was on the couch, exactly where he had left me that morning. Same position, same calm. Different person. He stopped a few feet in front of me, breathing slightly heavier than normal. His phone was still in his hand, screen lighting up over and over again. They know, he said. Not a question. A statement. Yes, I said. His jaw tightened. You had no right. I tilted my head slightly. No right to what? To expose something that was private. Private. The word echoed in my mind like a joke with no punchline. Like Harmony's miscarriage, I asked. His face changed instantly. Not guilt. Recognition. He knew I had read it. All of it. That's not, he started. They figured it out in minutes, I continued. You didn't even try very hard to hide them. His phone rang again. He looked down at it, declined the call. It rang again immediately. Fix this, he said, more urgently now. Tell them it's fake. Tell them it's fiction. Tell them something. I watched him carefully. This man, this stranger, standing in front of me, asking me to lie for him. Again. I didn't make up your blog, Ethan. Then say you don't know who wrote it. Do you hear yourself? I asked quietly. He ran a hand through his hair, pacing now. This was my income, Emily. My work. Your work? I repeated. Yes. You think your salary alone was enough? I had to build something real. By selling people's trauma? I asked. They didn't know. They do now. His phone buzzed again. This time he answered. Jade, listen. No, that's not what it looks like. Of course I didn't. He stopped. His face shifted, color draining slightly. I would never write about, no, that wasn't you, that was... The call ended. He stared at the phone for a second before lowering it slowly. They're blocking me, he said. Not to me, to himself. Like he couldn't quite process it yet. One by one. Doors closing. Access revoked. Narratives collapsing. You've ruined everything, he whispered. I looked at him for a long moment. Really looked. At the man I had loved. The man I had almost married. The man who had spent months convincing me that my reality was wrong, while secretly building a business out of everyone else's. And for the first time, I felt nothing resembling guilt. No, I said gently. You did that all on your own. He looked up at me then. And for a brief second, just a flicker, I saw something break through the performance. Not remorse. Not yet. But fear. Real, unfiltered fear. Because the version of himself he had so carefully constructed was no longer under his control. And he didn't know how to survive without it. I hope it was worth it, I added softly. He didn't answer. Because deep down, he already knew the answer. And it wasn't one he could rewrite. For a long moment, neither of us moved. The apartment felt different now. Same furniture, same walls. But the illusion that had been holding everything together was gone. Ethan let out a slow breath and ran both hands through his hair. This isn't over, he muttered, more to himself than to me. I can fix this. I didn't respond. Because I had already learned something important about him. He didn't fix things. He rebranded them. My friends, he started, pacing again. They're emotional right now. They'll calm down. They always do. I tilted my head slightly. You built a business on the assumption that people would stay quiet, I said. That they wouldn't compare notes. He stopped, turned to look at me. That's not what I... But they did, I continued calmly. And now they're talking to each other instead of to you. His jaw tightened. You don't understand how this works. No, I said softly. I understand exactly how it works. And that was the problem. His phone buzzed again. This time he didn't even check it. He just dropped it onto the table like it had burned him. Fine, he snapped. You win. I raised an eyebrow slightly. Win? Isn't that what this is, he said, his voice rising now. Some kind of revenge? You wanted to prove you weren't insecure, so congratulations. You destroyed everything. There it was. The shift. Blame, wrapped in wounded pride. I stood up slowly, setting my mug aside. I didn't destroy anything, I said. I showed people what was already there. That's the same thing, he shot back. No, I replied. It's really not. He stared at me like he was trying to find the version of me he could still manipulate. The one who would soften, apologize, second-guess herself, but she wasn't there anymore. Us. Look, he said, changing tactics again. Softer now. We can get through this. I almost smiled. We. There is no we, Ethan. His expression flickered. Don't say that. You wrote an entire post about replacing me, I said evenly. You just hadn't published it yet. That hit. Hard. You read that? He asked. Yes. It wasn't finished. It didn't need to be. Silence. Heavy. Final. He turned away from me then, jaw tight, breathing uneven. You know what? He said after a moment. Fine. Maybe I was already moving on. I didn't react. Maybe I found someone who actually understands me, he continued, his voice sharpening again. Someone who isn't constantly questioning everything I do. The woman from the cocktail lounge? I asked calmly. He froze, slowly turned back toward me. You've been following me? No, I said. You just weren't as careful as you thought. A pause. Then, she's not like you, he said. I nodded slightly. I know. That seemed to throw him off more than anything else I'd said. She's different, he insisted. More aligned with my mindset. Married? I asked. The word landed like a stone dropped into still water. He blinked. What? Her name is Vanessa Hale, I said. Her husband posted their anniversary photos last month. Very sweet, actually. His face drained of color. You're lying. I picked up my phone, unlocked it, and held it out. Am I? He stepped closer slowly, eyes scanning the screen. There it was. Vanessa. Her husband. 2 children. Smiling in a photo that now felt painfully ironic. Ethan stared at it for a long second. Then another. She told me they were separated, he said finally, but his voice had lost its certainty. Maybe she told you what you wanted to hear, I replied. Just like you told everyone else. He stepped back, running a hand over his face. This is insane, he muttered. It is, I agreed. For a brief second, I almost felt something close to sympathy. Not for him, for the collapse. For the moment, when reality catches up so fast, it leaves no room to breathe. Don't. His phone buzzed again. And again. Finally, he picked it up, looked at the screen, answered. Vanessa, He stopped. His expression shifted. Not confusion, not anger. Something worse. Oh, he said quietly. A pause. I can explain. Another pause. Longer this time. Then, no, that's not... The call ended. He lowered the phone slowly. She blocked me, he said. I didn't ask what was said. I didn't need to, because I already knew. Someone had sent her the screenshots. And if I had to guess, it wasn't me. Harmony, I said softly. He looked up. She's very protective of other women, I added, especially married ones. The realization hit him all at once. His friends, his audience, his carefully curated network, gone. His other option, gone. Everything he had been juggling, crashing down at the same time. I hate you, he said quietly. The words hung in the air. Empty. I know, I replied. And strangely, I meant it. He laughed then. A short, bitter sound. All of this, over some stupid blog. I shook my head. No. I took a step closer. This happened because you built your life on lies, I said. The blog was just where you wrote them down. He didn't respond. Because there was nothing left to say. Oh. He packed that night. Not dramatically. Not loudly. Just methodically. Clothes into a suitcase, shoes into a bag, laptop carefully placed last. I watched from the doorway, not stopping him, not helping, just witnessing the end of something that had already been over long before either of us admitted it. At the door, he paused, hand on the handle. You know what the worst part is? He said without turning around. I didn't answer. I did love you, he added, at some point. I considered that, then nodded once. I know. A beat. Just not enough to be honest. He didn't argue. Didn't defend, didn't rewrite it. For the first time, he let the truth exist without trying to control it. Then he opened the door and left. The aftermath was faster than I expected. Within 48 hours, everything unraveled. The blog spread. Not because I pushed it, but because the women he had written about did. With names, with screenshots, with context. The same internet he had used to build his image turned on him with ruthless precision. His subscribers dropped. His payment links were reported. The platform shut down his account within days. His social media lost thousands of followers. Comments flooded in. Not admiration this time, but anger, disgust, accountability. His friend groups disappeared overnight. The gym revoked his membership. The networking circles he bragged about stopped returning his messages. Doors closed quietly. Completely. A week later, I got a message. From Vanessa. Thank you, it said. I didn't know the full picture. A second message followed. We're working on things. My husband deserved to know. I stared at the screen for a long moment, then set the phone down. Not satisfied. Not vindicated. Just finished. Ethan tried damage control. Of course he did. A long apology post. Carefully worded. Talking about growth and losing his way. The comments were brutal. Because apologies only work when they're not your first honest sentence. He moved back in with his parents. Last I heard, he was trying to start another online project. Different angle. Same voice. Some people don't change. They just rename the pattern. As for me, I thought I would feel broken. I thought I would collapse under the weight of everything I had almost lost. But what I felt instead was quiet. Clear. Like stepping out of a room that had been too loud for too long. I started therapy. Not because I couldn't function, but because I wanted to understand why I had stayed as long as I did. I joined a weekend hiking group. Started saying yes to things I used to overthink. Focused on work. Got promoted 3 months later. Funny how much easier life becomes when you're not constantly second-guessing your own reality. And then, unexpectedly, I met someone. Nothing dramatic. No sparks flying across the room. Just normal. We got coffee. Talked. Laughed. On our second date, when I offered to pay, he smiled and said, Let's split it. Simple. Equal. No performance. No strategy. Just real. Looking back, the signs had always been there. The inconsistencies. The subtle dismissals. The way I was slowly trained to doubt my own instincts. But when you love someone, you don't call it manipulation. You call it misunderstanding. You call it stress. You call it something temporary. Until one day, you don't. He told me I was insecure, that I was imagining things, that I was the problem. But here's the truth I learned the hard way. When something feels off, it usually is. And trusting that feeling, that's not weakness. That's awareness. I wasn't too insecure. If anything, I wasn't insecure enough.